My name is Liliana, and I'm standing outside this massive mansion in the rain, watching droplets hit the marble steps like tears. My dress is torn at the shoulder, my carefully styled hair is falling apart, and I can still hear their laughter echoing through those golden doors behind me. Just 20 minutes ago, I walked through those same doors with my head held high, believing I belonged. Now I know the truth about people like them. They looked at me and saw nothing. A simple woman in a simple dress. Someone who cleans their hotels, who smiles politely when they drop their towels on the floor. They thought I was nobody worth knowing, nobody worth respecting. What they didn't know was that the man they bow and scrape to, the one whose name opens every door in this city, the one who signs their paychecks and donations, he's the same man who kisses me goodnight every evening. They thought I was nobody. They had no idea who they just humiliated. And now they're about to find out exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong person's wife. Stay with me until the end to witness the most satisfying moment of revenge you'll ever see. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when my husband arrives. You're probably wondering how a hotel housekeeper ends up at a charity gala in the first place. Let me take you back to the beginning of my story. My name is Liliana, and for the past 5 years I've worked at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel downtown. Every morning at 6, I put on my uniform and head to work, cleaning rooms, changing sheets, and making sure every guest feels like royalty. Most people don't really see me. I'm invisible to them, just another face in the background making their lives comfortable. But that's okay. I've always believed that every job has dignity, and I take pride in what I do. When guests leave their rooms, I make sure everything is perfect for the next person. I fold towels into little swans, leave chocolates on pillows, and sometimes even write welcome notes for special occasions. My coworkers always say I'm too kind for my own good. When new employees start, I'm the one who shows them the ropes. When someone calls in sick, I cover their shifts without complaining. I treat everyone the same, from the newest hire to the hotel manager, with respect and kindness. That's just who I am. What none of them know is my secret. When I leave work each day, I don't go home to a tiny apartment like they assume. I go home to a man who changes everything about how the world sees me. But I've never told anyone at work about my personal life. Why? Because I love being treated like everyone else. I love earning my own way, having my own identity beyond being someone's wife. Little did I know that keeping this secret would lead to the most humiliating night of my life and the most satisfying revenge you'll ever witness. 3 weeks ago, something unusual happened at work. I was finishing my shift, pushing my cleaning cart down the hallway, when the hotel manager, Mr. Peterson, called out to me. He was standing near the elevator with an elegant envelope in his hand, looking puzzled. "Liliana," he said, walking toward me. "This came for you, hand-delivered this morning." He handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in beautiful gold script. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, heavier than anything I'd ever received. I thanked him and waited until I was alone to open it. Inside was an invitation to the annual Sterling Foundation Charity Gala, one of the most exclusive events in the city. The kind of party where millionaires and politicians gather to write checks for good causes. The invitation was addressed specifically to me, not just guest or occupant. My full name, Liliana Martinez, was printed in that same elegant script. My heart raced as I read it. There had to be some mistake. People like me don't get invited to events like this. Maybe someone with a similar name? But no, they even had my work address correct. I stared at that invitation for what felt like hours, trying to figure out how this could have happened. I thought about throwing it away. What would someone like me do at a high society charity gala? I'd never been to anything fancier than my cousin's wedding, but something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, made me keep that invitation. I slipped it into my purse and carried it home, where I stared at it some more. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to that party. For 3 weeks, I saved every penny I could. I skipped lunches, walked to work instead of taking the bus, and even picked up extra shifts on weekends. My goal was simple: Buy one beautiful dress for one special night. I wasn't trying to compete with women who spent thousands on gowns. I just wanted to feel elegant, to belong, even if just for a few hours. I found the perfect dress at a department store sale, a simple black number with delicate beading around the neckline. It cost me almost 2 weeks' salary, but when I tried it on, I felt transformed. It wasn't designer, but it was beautiful, classic, timeless. I bought matching shoes from a discount store and spent my last $20 on a small clutch purse. The day of the gala, I called in sick to work. I spent the morning at a budget salon getting my hair washed and styled into a simple updo. I did my own makeup, watching YouTube tutorials to perfect a smoky eye look. I painted my nails a soft pink and practiced walking in my new heels around my bedroom. As evening approached, I stood in front of my full-length mirror, hardly recognizing myself. The woman looking back at me seemed sophisticated, confident, ready for anything. I took photos to remember this moment, me, a hotel housekeeper, dressed up for the social event of the year. My husband had left for work early that morning, but he'd kissed me goodbye and told me I looked beautiful even in my robe. He didn't know about the gala. I wanted to surprise him with stories of my adventure when he got home. If only I'd known what was waiting for me that night. The mansion was even more impressive in person than in the pictures I'd seen in magazines. A curved driveway led to a grand entrance where valets in crisp uniforms opened car doors for arriving guests. I watched from my Uber as women in designer gowns and men in expensive tuxedos stepped out of luxury cars, looking like they belonged in a movie. My driver pulled up behind a Bentley, and suddenly it was my turn. The valet opened my door with the same courtesy he'd shown everyone else, but I caught his quick glance at my simple dress, my discount store clutch. I thanked him with a smile and walked toward the entrance, my heart pounding against my ribs. The moment I stepped inside, I felt the difference. This wasn't just wealth. This was old money, generational power, the kind of society I'd only read about in novels. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings, marble floors reflected the warm glow of candlelight, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Other guests moved through the space with an effortless grace I'd never learned. They held champagne flutes like extensions of their manicured hands, their laughter musical and refined. I stood near the entrance for a moment, taking it all in, trying to memorize every detail. Then I noticed the stairs. Subtle at first, a quick glance from a woman in emerald silk, a raised eyebrow from a man adjusting his diamond cufflinks. Whispers started following me as I moved deeper into the room. I kept my chin up, reminding myself that I had an invitation just like everyone else. I belonged here tonight. But their eyes told a different story entirely. I approached the registration table where a blonde woman in a silver gown was checking in guests. When I handed her my invitation, she studied it longer than she had anyone else's, flipping it over as if looking for some sign of forgery. Her smile seemed forced as she handed me a name tag and pointed toward the refreshment table. "Enjoy the party," she said, but her tone suggested she doubted I would. I made my way toward the champagne fountain, trying to look confident. A waiter offered me a glass and I accepted it gratefully, hoping it would calm my nerves. That's when a woman in a stunning red dress appeared beside me. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sweetly condescending. "I don't think we've met. I know most of the regular donors here. Are you perhaps someone's assistant, driver, here to help with the event?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks but kept my voice steady. "Actually, I'm a guest. I received an invitation." She looked me up and down, taking in every detail of my carefully chosen outfit. "How interesting. And what foundation do you represent? Which company did you say you work for?" "I work at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel," I replied honestly. The change in her expression was immediate. Her eyebrows shot up and she actually took a step back. "The hotel? As in, housekeeping?" She said the word like it tasted bitter. Before I could respond, she'd already turned to the woman next to her, whispering behind her jeweled hand. I caught fragments. "Hotel maid." How did she even... Must be some mistake. I stood there, champagne growing warm in my hand, watching as my presence became the most interesting gossip of the evening. Word spreads quickly in circles like these. Within 30 minutes, I could feel the entire room's energy shift. Conversations quieted when I passed, only to resume in hushed, urgent tones behind me. I tried to focus on the beautiful art adorning the walls, the elegant floral arrangements, anything but the growing circle of attention around me. Then she appeared. Victoria Sterling, the event hostess herself. I recognized her from newspaper photos, though she looked even more intimidating in person. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a gown that probably cost more than I make in a year. She glided toward me with the predatory grace of someone who'd never been told no. "You must be our mysterious gatecrasher," she said, her voice carrying across the nearby conversations. The words weren't loud, but they might as well have been shouted through a megaphone. Every head in our vicinity turned toward us. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. I have an invitation," I said, reaching for my purse. Victoria held up a perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, I'm sure you do. The question is how you got it. You see, I personally approve every name on our guest list. I know every donor, every board member, every person of influence in this city. And you, my dear, are none of those things." A crowd had gathered now, forming a loose circle around us like spectators at a schoolyard fight. I felt trapped, exposed, like an animal in a zoo. My mouth went dry as I realized this wasn't just about my presence anymore. This was becoming a public spectacle. "I work hard for everything I have," I said quietly. "I don't deserve to be treated this way." Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Deserve? Oh, honey, this isn't about what you deserve." Victoria's voice grew louder, ensuring everyone could hear her performance. "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to have an interesting situation here. This young woman claims to have an invitation to our exclusive charity gala. She says she works at, what was it, the Grand Metropolitan Hotel?" She paused for effect, letting the words hang in the air like an accusation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw people pulling out their phones, probably to record what was happening. My face burned with humiliation, but I forced myself to stand straighter. "There's obviously been some mistake," Victoria continued, her tone dripping with false concern. "Perhaps someone stole a legitimate invitation? Or maybe this is some elaborate joke. Either way, I simply cannot allow someone to crash our event, especially when we're raising money for such important causes." "I didn't steal anything," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was invited." "By whom?" Victoria demanded. "Name one person at this event who knows you personally. Just one." I looked around the circle of faces, all strangers, all staring at me with mixtures of curiosity, disgust, and entertainment. My invitation felt genuine in my hands, but surrounded by all this wealth and hostility, I began to doubt myself. Had someone played a cruel joke on me? Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling security. This has gone on long enough. We have important guests here, serious donors who shouldn't have to deal with this disruption." The crowd seemed to approve of her decision. I heard someone say, "About time." Another person whispered, "How embarrassing for her." I felt smaller and smaller with each passing second, like I was disappearing into the marble floor beneath my feet. 2 security guards in black suits appeared within minutes. They must have been stationed nearby, waiting. Victoria gestured toward me like I was a piece of furniture she wanted removed. "Gentlemen, this woman doesn't belong here. Please escort her out quietly. We don't want to disturb our other guests any further." "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us," one of the guards said, his voice professional but firm. He reached for my arm and I pulled back instinctively. "Wait, please," I said, my voice cracking. "There has to be some mistake. I have an invitation. Look, it has my name on it." I held out the elegant envelope with shaking hands. Victoria barely glanced at it. "Anyone can fake an invitation these days. The fact remains that you don't belong here. You're making our guests uncomfortable." She turned to address the crowd with a theatrical sigh. "I'm so sorry, everyone. We'll have this sorted out in just a moment." The security guards flanked me, not roughly, but leaving no room for argument. I looked around one last time, hoping someone, anyone, might step forward and defend me. But every face I saw reflected the same sentiment.
I thought I had everything planned out. A perfect wedding, a perfect life with my fiancée Sarah. But one rainy night in a small cafe, I met Luna, a waitress whose smile made me question everything I thought I knew about love. This is the story of how she changed my world forever. If you've ever wondered whether true love is worth risking everything for, this story will blow your mind. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. You won't want to miss the shocking twists ahead. I remember thinking I had it all figured out. My name is Michael, and by 35, I was living what most people would call the perfect life. As CEO of a tech company I'd built from the ground up, I had everything society told me I should want. A penthouse overlooking the city, a garage full of expensive cars, and more money than I knew what to do with. But the crown jewel of my perfect life was Sarah. Blonde, beautiful, from one of the oldest money families in the city. She was exactly the kind of woman my parents had always hoped I'd marry. The proposal was everything Sarah dreamed of and more. I'd bought out the entire top floor of the city's most exclusive restaurant, the kind where you need a 6-month waiting list just to get a reservation. The ring cost more than most people's houses, a flawless 5-carat diamond that caught the light from every angle. When I got down on one knee, Sarah gasped so loud that half the city probably heard her. Her yes was supposed to be the moment everything clicked into place. What followed was a whirlwind of wedding planning that made my company's IPO look simple. Sarah spent her days choosing between Italian marble and French limestone for the venue floor, debating whether we needed 300 or 500 guests, and obsessing over a wedding dress that cost more than a luxury car. My parents couldn't have been happier. They called it the perfect merger behind closed doors, though they thought I couldn't hear them. Sarah's family felt the same way. It wasn't just two people getting married, it was two empires joining forces. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Success can be suffocating. Those late nights at the office weren't just about building the business anymore. They were about avoiding the emptiness that crept in when everything got quiet. I'd sit in my office looking out at the city lights, feeling like I was sleepwalking through my own life. Sarah's laugh felt rehearsed. Our conversations revolved around wine selections and flower arrangements. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing a character in someone else's movie. Despite having everything I thought I wanted, I felt more alone than ever. Something was missing, and I had no idea what it was. Yet, that rainy Tuesday night changed everything. I was driving back from yet another tedious board meeting when my car, a $200,000 piece of German engineering, decided to break down in the middle of nowhere. Steam poured from under the hood like a mechanical geyser, and I found myself stranded in a neighborhood I'd never seen before. The rain was coming down in sheets, soaking through my expensive suit as I searched for shelter. That's when I spotted it, a small diner with a flickering neon sign that read Sunrise Diner. The place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s, with chipped paint and mismatched furniture visible through the steamed-up windows. It was the complete opposite of every restaurant I usually frequented, but it was warm and dry, and that's all I cared about in that moment. I pushed through the door, dripping wet and probably looking like a drowned cat in my designer clothes. That's when I saw her. Luna was wiping down tables, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a simple uniform that somehow looked perfect on her. When she looked up at me with those warm brown eyes, I swear the whole world stopped spinning. Her smile wasn't the practiced, camera-ready smile I was used to. It was genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes. "Rough night?" she asked, grabbing a towel and handing it to me without missing a beat. Her voice had this musical quality that made even the simplest words sound like poetry. I fumbled with the towel, suddenly feeling like a teenager with my first crush instead of a successful CEO. "You could say that," I managed, still staring like an idiot. She led me to a corner booth. The vinyl cracked, but comfortable, and poured me a cup of coffee without asking. It was perfect, strong, hot, exactly what I needed. We started talking, and something magical happened. Luna didn't know who I was, didn't care about my net worth or my company. She asked about my dreams, not my stock portfolio. She told me about her goal of saving enough to open her own bakery someday, her eyes lighting up as she described the cakes she'd make. When she laughed at something I said, really laughed, not the polite chuckles I got from Sarah. I felt more alive than I had in years.
I was an intruder who'd been caught and was being rightfully removed. As they guided me toward the exit, I heard the laughter start, not just from Victoria, but from the crowd that had gathered to watch my humiliation. It followed me down the grand hallway, through the marble foyer, and out into the cool night air. The massive doors closed behind me with a decisive thud. I stood on the steps in the gathering darkness, rain beginning to fall, my beautiful dress torn at the shoulder from somewhere in the ordeal. The laughter inside continued, muffled now but still audible. I stood there in the rain for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My carefully styled hair was getting damp, my makeup was starting to run, and my heart felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. I'd never felt so small, so worthless, so completely humiliated in my entire life. That's when I remembered my phone. With trembling fingers, I pulled it from my clutch and dialed the one number that always made everything better. It rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Hey, beautiful. How's your evening going?" I couldn't speak at first. The kindness in his voice, the love I heard in those simple words, broke something loose inside me. A sob escaped before I could stop it. "Liliana? What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "They threw me out," I whispered into the phone, my voice barely audible over the rain. "They said I don't belong. They called security and threw me out like I was nothing." Silence on the other end. Then, in a voice I'd only heard him use in business calls, cold and precise, "Where are you exactly?" "Outside the Sterling Mansion, the charity gala. I thought I could belong here for one night. I was so stupid." "Listen to me carefully," he said, and I could hear movement in the background, like he was already gathering things. "You are not stupid. You are not nothing. You are everything. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move, don't leave. I'm coming to get you right now. But you're at work, and it's late, and Liliana." His voice was gentle but firm. "I'm coming. And honey, they have no idea what they just did." 20 minutes later, I heard them before I saw them, the low rumble of expensive engines cutting through the rain. I looked up from where I'd been sitting on the marble steps, and my breath caught in my throat. 3 black luxury cars were turning into the circular driveway. Not just any cars, these were the kind of vehicles that moved presidents and prime ministers, the kind with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside, with diplomatic plates that made traffic laws seem like suggestions. The lead car stopped directly in front of the mansion's entrance, and I watched as men in dark suits stepped out of the other vehicles. They moved with the precise coordination of a well-trained team, scanning the area, taking positions around the property. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. The back door of the lead car opened, and then I saw him. My husband stepped out into the rain like he owned the very ground beneath his feet. He moved with that quiet confidence I'd fallen in love with years ago, but tonight it carried something more, an authority that made the air itself seem to shift around him. He saw me immediately, his eyes finding mine across the distance. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward me, ignoring the rain, ignoring everything except getting to his wife. When he reached me, he gently took my face in his hands and kissed my forehead. "I'm here now," he whispered. "It's going to be okay." Then he straightened up, and I saw his expression change. The loving husband disappeared, replaced by someone I'd only glimpsed in news articles and business meetings. He looked toward the mansion's golden doors, and his smile was anything but warm. "Now," he said quietly, "let's go inside." The moment we walked back through those golden doors, the energy in the room shifted like someone had cut the power and turned it back on. The same people who had watched me being humiliated just 30 minutes ago now stood frozen, their champagne glasses halfway to their lips, their conversations dying mid-sentence. I watched it happen in slow motion, the recognition spreading through the crowd like ripples on water. First one face, then another as people realized who had just entered. The man they'd thrown out? He was married to him. Victoria Sterling had been holding court near the champagne fountain, probably regaling the crowd with details of my removal. I saw her mid-laugh, gesturing with her hands, completely absorbed in her moment of social triumph. Then someone tapped her shoulder and pointed toward us. The laugh died on her lips. The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. My husband kept his arm around my waist, steady and protective, as he surveyed the room with calm, calculating eyes. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone was making his point. These people who had treated his wife like garbage were now realizing exactly who they'd crossed. "Good evening," he said finally, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. "I believe you've all met my wife, Liliana." The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows and someone's nervous cough. I could practically hear hearts racing, minds scrambling to figure out how to fix what they'd broken. Victoria Sterling looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. My husband's voice remained perfectly calm, but there was steel beneath the silk. "I understand there was some confusion about my wife's invitation tonight. I'd like to hear exactly what happened." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, suddenly finding their shoes fascinating. No one wanted to be the first to speak, to admit their part in what had transpired. Victoria Sterling stood frozen, her face a mask of barely contained panic. "Sir," one of the security guards approached hesitantly. "We were told to escort the lady out. We were just following orders." My husband's gaze shifted to the guard, and something in his expression made the man take a step back. "Orders from whom?" All eyes turned to Victoria. She straightened her shoulders, trying to salvage some dignity, but her voice shook when she spoke. There was a misunderstanding about the guest list. We didn't realize." "You didn't realize what exactly? That my wife deserved basic human decency? That she had every right to be here?" He paused, letting the questions hang in the air. "Or perhaps you didn't realize that when you humiliate someone I love, you're humiliating me." Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. Around the room, I caught glimpses of people pulling out their phones again, not to record my humiliation this time, but to capture Victoria's downfall. "I want to be very clear about something," my husband continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "My wife works hard for everything she has. She treats everyone with respect and kindness regardless of their status. Tonight, you showed her exactly the opposite. You judged her by her clothes, her job, her bank account. You forgot that true worth isn't measured in dollars." Victoria finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate whisper. "Please, I had no idea. If I had known she was your wife, we would have treated her with the utmost respect." My husband's expression didn't change. "And therein lies the problem, doesn't it? You would have treated her differently if you'd known who she was married to. But every person should be treated with dignity, regardless of their connections." I watched Victoria's world crumble in real time. Her face went through a spectrum of emotions: panic, desperation, calculation. She was trying to figure out how to fix this, how to make it go away, how to save herself from the social and professional devastation that was surely coming. "I apologize," she said, turning to me with what she probably thought was a sincere expression. "Liliana, I am so deeply sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Perhaps you could find it in your heart to forgive this misunderstanding." Before I could respond, my husband stepped slightly forward. "Forgiveness is my wife's choice to make. But let me be clear about the consequences of tonight's actions." His voice remained calm, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "The Sterling Foundation has received significant donations from my companies over the years. That ends tonight." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face went white as she realized the financial implications. "Furthermore," he continued, "I'll be reaching out to every business leader and philanthropist in this room. They should know exactly how you treat people you consider beneath you." Victoria's legs seemed to give out slightly. Someone caught her arm to steady her. The social queen of the city had just become its pariah, and everyone knew it. The shift in the room's dynamics was immediate and brutal. People who had been laughing at my expense 30 minutes ago were now backing away from Victoria like she had a contagious disease. I watched as the same social instincts that had made them gang up on me now turned against her. The event organizers appeared as if from nowhere, people I hadn't seen during my humiliation, but who suddenly had a lot to say. "Sir, madam, we are profoundly sorry," one of them stuttered. "This was completely unacceptable. We had no idea this would happen." My husband's response was measured but firm. "You had no idea because you didn't bother to find out. You saw my wife being mistreated and did nothing to stop it." Meanwhile, Victoria was experiencing her own social exile. People who had been hanging on her every word were now giving her a wide berth. I heard whispered conversations. "I can't believe she did that." "How mortifying. We should probably leave." One of the organizers approached me directly, wringing his hands. "Mrs. Ma'am, please accept our deepest apologies. We would be honored if you would stay and enjoy the rest of the evening. Perhaps we could find you a better table, introduce you to some of our other distinguished guests." The irony wasn't lost on me. These were the same people who had stood by watching as I was torn apart and ejected. Now they were falling over themselves to make amends, not because they suddenly cared about me as a person, but because they were terrified of the consequences of their inaction. I looked around the room at all these faces, some ashamed, some frightened, some still trying to process what had happened. The laughter that had followed me out the door was nowhere to be heard now. My husband's voice cut through the nervous chatter. "I think it's important that everyone here understands who my wife really is." He looked at me with such love and pride that I felt tears spring to my eyes. But these were different tears than the ones I'd shed outside. "Liliana works at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, yes. But what she does there goes far beyond her job description. She's the person who stays late to help new employees learn the ropes. She's donated her overtime pay to help coworkers with family emergencies. She's organized collections for colleagues' medical bills and started a tutoring program for employees' children." I felt my cheeks warm. I'd never told him some of these things. He must have found out on his own. "She volunteers at the Children's Hospital every weekend, reading to kids who are too sick to go home. She runs a free English class for immigrants in our community center. She's never asked for recognition, never sought publicity for any of it." The room was completely silent now, hanging on every word. I fell in love with her because of her heart, her kindness, her complete lack of pretension. She keeps working not because she has to, but because she believes in earning her own way, in contributing something meaningful to the world. He paused, letting his words sink in. "Tonight, you judged her by her paycheck and her dress. You missed seeing someone worth 100 of any of you. And now," he continued, his tone becoming businesslike, "we need to discuss how things are going to change. My foundation will be redirecting our charitable giving to organizations that actually embody the values they claim to support." Victoria made a small choking sound, but no one looked at her anymore. As I stood there in that opulent ballroom, surrounded by people who had just witnessed Victoria Sterling's social execution, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Not for myself, that chapter was closed, but for her. She was still standing near the champagne fountain, isolated and humiliated, experiencing exactly what she'd put me through. I looked up at my husband, the man who had just wielded his power like a sword in my defense, and made a decision that surprised even me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying across the room. The conversation stopped again, everyone turning to see what the wronged wife would say next. I walked toward Victoria, my heels clicking on the marble floor, the very sound that had announced my arrival hours ago. Victoria's eyes were wide with fear as I approached. I could see her trembling slightly, probably expecting me to deliver some final blow, to revel in her downfall. Instead, I stopped in front of her and spoke quietly, just loud enough for nearby people to hear. "Victoria, I forgive you." The words seemed to shock her more than any insult could have. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I forgive you," I repeated, "because holding on to anger would make me into someone I don't want to be. You made a mistake tonight, a big one. You let your prejudices blind you to basic human decency, but I hope you'll learn from this." I turned back to my husband, who was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of love, admiration, and complete awe. But because we both learned something about standing up for what's right, about using whatever power you have to protect those who can't protect themselves. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Share this with someone who needs to remember that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their job title or bank account. And most importantly, ask yourself, how do you treat the people who serve you every day? The housekeepers, the cashiers, the janitors? Do you see them as people worthy of dignity and respect? What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, kindness is always in style and character never goes out of fashion.